With Colorado facing a $600 million budget shortfall, Governor Bill Ritter has called for everything from hiring freezes to delayed spending. So, when the cost of a recent economic trip to Asia by the governor was revealed, it raised some eyebrows. Tonight in the 10:15 Difference, Call 7 investigator Tony Kowaleski takes a closer look at what appears to be a mixed message on where to cut back spending.
Mike, it was a trip to secure a direct flight from Japan to Denver and bring new jobs to our state. Now, let's be clear, the $78,000 will not solve the state's current budget problem. The issue is the governor's apparent mixed message. He's now calling for cuts throughout the state, and back in November, the governor and members of his staff traveled in luxury to Asia.
126 reduced speed to 190.
This mission was a huge success.
10 state employees, 11 days in November, and 4 different cities.
Our purpose was to seek out new economic opportunities and new jobs.
An economic development trip in the middle of an economic crisis, all funded with $78,000 state dollars.
I think that our first order of business this session must be to prudently manage the budget.
This is Governor Ritter in his State of the State speech. It came less than 2 months after he and his staff spent thousands in state dollars on luxury flights and 5-star accommodations. This is how Governor Ritter and 2 other top state appointees flew to and from Japan.
Relax in the soothing comfort of our business class seats.
Business class comfort, $6,600 a seat. 3 tickets, nearly 20 grand in state money.
Folks decided 12 o'clock.
No regrets on your decision to fly business class?
I really believe it was right for me to be at that place where I could go in over a several-day period, give 46 speeches or interviews, be the leader of the delegation, be rested as much as you can rest.
But in fact, no meetings were on his schedule the evening he arrived, and he had time for a full night of sleep before his first session the next morning. The governor also justified the trip by saying 10 other governors led similar missions in 2008.
The governor of Oregon had been there the day before.
Now here's the comparison to the Oregon trip. Colorado's taxpayers paid 35% more in total cost than Oregon. Oregon taxpayers paid for 7 to travel. Colorado sent 10. Oregon needed 9 days, Colorado 11. And Oregon's governor flew coach, paying $3,700 less than Governor Ritter's seat in business class. He flew coach. Why the difference?
I'm just telling you, I've explained why we did what we did. If you ask anybody on this trip, this isn't the people who were on the Oregon trip, the people on this trip with us, how aggressive I was, that it's absolutely justifiable.
Essential.
I believe I've said what I'm going to say about this, Tony.
1642, maintain 3,000.
Is this trip justifiable?
Oh, I believe it was, yes.
Don Elliman is the state's Director of Economic Development and International Trade. Could it have been canceled towards the end?
We talked about it. We discussed it. I think the governor and I both came to the same conclusion.
And while the costs of the trip are clear, 4 months after the Colorado delegation returned, tangible accomplishments are hard to prove. When you return from the trip, do you go through a report card?
Did I sit down and have essentially a debrief that tried to go over the entire mission and say, did we achieve everything we set out to do? The answer to that is no, I did not.
This was a very costly trip, and it doesn't seem to be the most prudent time to be taking it.
Chantell Taylor is the director of Colorado Ethics Watch.
It's hard to justify spending over $70,000 on a trip to Asia when most Coloradans are just struggling to meet pay their basic bills and meet their basic needs.
Is it unfair for us to raise these questions after this trip during this economic time?
Listen, you know, you're in a business where you have things that you want to look at. You decide what to do about that. I think that in government it's important to be transparent.
You look back on it now, would you change anything in hindsight?
It's important for us to continue to economically develop the state.
It's clear to us the governor's staff knew that people might criticize this mission before it happened. Take a look at this memo written before the governor's trip. It's by his spokesperson. It reads, "We need a pretty solid accounting of how much this trip will cost and if they can compare this trip to Asia's trip by Governor Owens." Now, While the documents of Owen's trips no longer exist, sources tell us the former governor did not have taxpayers paying for business class flights. Bottom line, there was a difference.
Okay, I'm wondering if there's somebody sitting out there right now watching this story saying, now, isn't that the governor's job? Isn't he supposed to go out there and try to find business for our state?
Well, Mike, here it is. The issue is one of timing. 5-star hotels and business class seats in the middle of an economic crisis. There's also an issue of money collected from private businesses subsidizing this trip. Funding that brought several days of access to the governor. Funding that brings questions about whether it violated the state's new ethics law. Tomorrow night, we will take a look and see if the governor's team found a loophole in this new law.
I heard a part 2 in there I was sure about.
It's coming tomorrow night.
All right.